Welcome back, everyone, to the Axis of Genius podcast. This is DH, and I am here with my co-host, Blake Chalfant. So we're really excited for this third podcast. There's something about, having gotten our creative energy out, get the first two done. And I think this one is really going to be kind of reflective of our spirit of iteration and really just this pursuit of making this the highest quality it can possibly be. So if you're tuning in episode by episode, you'll notice some shifts, and there is some sense that the third establishes a pattern. So this is kind of I think a momentous moment in the sense that we're going from kind of like the hoeing out energy, as you've riffed on in the past, Blake, of just hoeing out our creative energy, getting all our we're going for it vibes, and getting into a solid groove, a solid cadence, finding how we're just making this thing happen. So in that spirit of establishing a pattern, one thing I wanted to start with was from last episode. I noticed a transformation happen in you, Blake, during the episode. And it was subtle, but for me, it kind of marketed something that I feel is resonant with your own sense of genius. And if I can just briefly wax on that, it's like axis of genius. We're aiming to bring out each other's genius. We're aiming to create an ecology where our genius is flourishing, both individually but together. But also for the listener, that is kind of one of the fundamental aims here, is that we are we're trying to inspire, get into this sense of what really brings out everyone who's listening genius, because we do believe that everyone has that inside of them. But I'll digress from that point, just touching on the aim here. What I noticed when I saw your genius come through, Blake, was there's something that really enlivened you. And maybe about 3/4 of the episode in, there's like a fire inside of you. You could feel it in your eyes. You could feel it in the way you were talking, the energy moving through you, the body language moving through you. It really felt like, whoa, okay, we're in a pocket. Blake is feeling really alive. And then I think it was the next day, something about this idea of the lightning came in, the idea of the lightning wielder. And we were riffing on lightning seekers and how to harness the lightning. And I felt like you really touched into something that for you had a lot of mythopoetic richness. And you sent me a long voice memo the next day, and you started off hey, this is going to be brief, but then it ended up being 9 minutes of you just fully in the pump up of what was possible, which is epic as always. So I wanted to kind of start us off with this sort of 1-2 punch. One is kind of this aspect of, what's going on here with this sense of your own feeling of that lightning. I want to kind of unpack some of that lightning strike for you, kind of how you locked in on that idea and then how you unpacked it in the following days. And then I'll kind of finish the setup with the sort of 1-2 combo by quoting you, because you quoted me last time, which was abrasive a little bit, but wonderful, abrasively wonderful to have your buddy quote you. But I wrote it down here, but now my laptop's covering my notes. It was something to the effect of breakthrough is the companion on the road of consistency. And I feel like these ideas are kind of entangled. And this was from your riffs on kind of stuck caterpillars, which I thought was a pretty profound sort of image as well. So this is my sort of opening foray in regards to wanting to hear from you. What came alive for you around the lightning? And if it's there for you, what's the thematic interplay there with breakthrough on the road of companion? Breakthrough as a companion on the road.
The quote and the way I said it is, breakthrough is a fellow traveler on the road of consistency. And so just this idea that often we wait for breakthrough to start being consistent or to start taking the steps. Really, it's, as so many people will say, masters, just start and keep going. And breakthrough is not always going to be there, but every now and then it comes, and, then you just realize it comes through consistency, which I'm still learning. But for me, I think the reason this lightning strike idea was so alive and struck such a deep chord for me is because it's been such a massive part of my life, and that I am a naturally kind of extreme person, and I feel a lot of lightning in my life. And so with that, there's been many times where the lightning has struck, the insight, the new horizon of what's possible, the feeling of, oh my gosh, I know exactly what I need to do. It's just these things. I finally figured it out. And I feel how possible that is. I know that I can do it. And, and then boring Tuesday comes around and I completely fall off the wagon. And so this sort of burnout from the lightning and it not happening, and then for me, that is often accompanied by a lot of shame and, oh my gosh, I didn't do this right, and oh my gosh, again, I've fallen off. I didn't actualize my potential. For me, so much of, I feel like, my work and what I'm interested is in how to close the distance between who we are and who we know we could be. And in some ways, that is the same as this sort of idea of the lightning. The lightning strikes and we have the glimpse of who we could be. But then really, most of our life is, and some might say all of our life, is really in the valley between that. I have the image of, I think it's the first Hobbit, when they come out under the mountain where Frodo first encounters Smeagol. But basically, the end of the movie is they come out of this one mountain and they're standing like halfway up this mountain and they can see across this vast valley. They see the mountain that they're trying to go to. Then there's this massive valley in between the mountain. And so that's really the way that I feel about these sort of lightning strike moments, is we see the mountain across the valley, but then 99% of our life, we're in the valley. And so, so that closing that distance between who we are and who we know we could be, that distance, closing that gap, that's the valley. And I think part of becoming a lightning wielder, becoming a sort of infinite player, is realizing that mostly all there is the valley. So we start to light a fire in the valley, sing songs, start to try and enjoy it more, which has been such a growth edge for me. And again, it's the same thing. Like, you can look at this sort of consistency and breakthrough tension in the same way. Most of the time, we're in the valley of consistency. But then every now and then, we get these sort of breakthrough moments where we're on the mountaintop. We're like, yes, we did it, breaking through. So
yeah, it's a really helpful reminder and just frame of reference, because one of the things I see often when I'm in sessions with clients is this felt sense of kind of checking, like, is my experience normal? Like, am I in the right place? Is what I'm experiencing wrong? And there's this way I think we look to each other to kind of validate our experience, to see if we're in the right place, to see if we're feeling things in a way that is legitimate, and then to really kind of check what the right process is to move from, say, where we are to where we really want to go. And I think one of the things that is alive for me around what we're doing here and now, and also I think it's alive in the Hobbit image too, is who you're on that journey with, who you're on the journey through that valley with. Because there is something really powerful about being within, say, the word band comes to mind. I'm not meaning like a musical band. Band,
guild?
team, guild, clan, all these synonyms, right?
Mm-hmm.
To say, there's a reason we're in this valley. There's a reason that we're going over to this mountain over here. And I feel like it's one of the themes that showed up a bit in the first episode around hyper-individualism, the sort of Western plight of individualism. It might be a through line, as we go. It may or may not be. But I do feel like it's worth underlining that sort of as a process, an iterative process, because we're both actively involved in building community. We're both actively involved in building a kind of a network. We've been referring to it as a mother culture, people who are essentially speaking the same language. And I suspect more or less feel like we're on a similar, if not the same quest. And maybe it's like capital Q quest in regards to we're all going to the same mountain, but we're doing it in our own unique ways, but we're kind of working together to up-level each other.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to bring that image in, because I feel like that aspect of, say, the guild is a really important thread that is a part of certainly my axis of genius in regards to what I notice is making sort of like the critical differences and like bringing my sense of motivation for contending with my, day-to-day valleys. But I also feel like it's a way in which maybe trustworthiness or a sense of trust in the process can inspire deeper confidence by knowing like you're on the right mission, but with the right people who are bringing out the best. If that makes sense.
For sure, man. There's so much there. I think the first thing you said, which I definitely track a lot in my own experience and with people, is this experience of checking ourselves, asking if this is the right approach. And I think a large part of that's just coming from our culture that has made no room at the table for our sort of individual rhythm and our individual nature. And so, yeah, like on the quest, I think there's these sort of core principles, like, for example, consistency is probably a really good bet for pretty much any human alive. That's going to be a part of your process. So there's things like this: consistency, training. Then there's so much nuance. You read a book like Daily Rituals, for example, and you just see, if you don't know this book, it's basically a compilation of all these amazing creatives, and it's, each chapter is about their own process. Some people were hammered at midnight, and that's when they wrote their best works. And so it just goes to show how different everyone's approaches are. And I think it's a really beautiful sort of permission slip. And so, yeah, I feel like that's something that the Valley naturally will bring out in people, because if you're not moving with your own nature, then it's not going to be a very enjoyable process. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
think there's a real key code around tapping into individual rhythm and the uniqueness of an individual process and how that links together with the people who we feel called to train with or become with.
totally. Yeah, and like, I think this is something I've been thinking about. I feel like a really good assumption for most people is actually to start by accepting their nature. So we're in this point of like, should I be doing it this way, or sorry, let me just start that over. The experience so many people have is that we judge the way that we're doing it ourselves. We judge the way that we are doing it. And so I think a great first assumption to make would be, what if the way that I was doing it was totally cool and this was just my nature?
Mm.
Because ultimately, the way that we're finding our nature and our rhythm is we're running experiments. We try things out and we see how it goes. We see one, how do we feel, and what are the results that it produces.
Yeah.
Okay, so we all have that sort of permission to put the experimenter's hat on and get in the trenches and start trying things out. But I think a great place to start would just be assuming and accepting that maybe your nature is just totally cool and that you're not doing anything wrong. That's a great place to start. And I think if most people started there, they would actually realize that, no, this is just the way that I do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's scary to do that, because it's like, well, what if I accept the way that I'm doing it, but then it's just resistance sneaking in, and then
Yeah.
and then I'm not, you know, that whole sort of mental mind fuck rabbit hole. But just,
Yeah.
I think starting there is a really good place.
Yeah. It's very nuanced, even in that I can feel the layers. And there is even a little bit of pushback there for me because I think of someone like Dan Brown, who, referencing a lot these days just because I'm digging on his Cloudless Mind series, which are just phenomenal, phenomenal Dharma talks. And one of his riffs is, that in, say, the pursuit of meditation, you really do need a teacher following your practice who's really kind of intimately involved, this relational model. Like, where is your practice? Where is your realization? How is your mind focusing, et cetera, et cetera. And part of what I think emerged for Dan, at least in the way he shares his process, is that he was noticing all these Westerners who were going on these mindfulness retreats, sort of the Burmese Western tradition meets sort of contemporary, the spirit rock. There's a whole movement of sort of quote unquote mindfulness meditation. And Dan was just noticing these people just, are sitting, say, a 7-day retreat, and they're sitting all day long, and they're just developing tons of bad habits, just bad habit
Mm,
after bad habit after bad habit. And the way
yeah.
that he kind of crystallized this is with the Sufi saying, which is, a log sits on a fire, but or a log, I forget, man, I'm messing up all the quotes. Something to the effect of a log is sitting there, but like a log doesn't awaken. There's nothing inherently about just sitting there that's going to awaken you. There's some kind of
Right.
process that's going to ignite. And so I feel like I'm offering that as a bit of a counterbalance because
Yeah,
on
yeah.
one hand, I feel like what you're saying is true. Like we do need fundamental acceptance, and we do need to make sure that our inner critic or inner judge isn't getting in the way of our process. But then on the flip side, we also need some kind of support. We need some kind of guidance, or there's some kind of relational interplay that helps us bring out the best of our state or bring out the best of a technique or the best of our process.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally, man. I agree with that full-heartedly. And I feel like there's maybe sort of like different arenas where maybe in like meditation, for example, there is more of a objective right way of doing it versus other areas where maybe there's like, for example, how do you work like in a work day? What are your best productive hours? Things like this where there's just so much room for nuance and so much room for what actually works better for you, for example. So I
Mm.
think they're different arenas, but I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. How one's working in their workday and attuning to that and then
Right,
honoring that and knowing that
right.
what's works for you isn't going to be what works for someone else.
Totally. Or like how do you relate, how do you socialize with people? What's your way that you tend to connect with people? And I know that looks different, but it's like if you like go into a social scene, you'll see that everyone's kind of moving in the space so differently. Everyone has their different way of they go and they interface with people. Some people are more, just bouncing around from people to people. Other people maybe they spend time kind of scanning the area and they go in. Again, on the one hand, we can look at that and say, well, there's so much just very subtle trauma layers that are influencing all these little dynamics, and that's probably true. But then there's another dimension of like, yo, maybe this is just how I connect with people. And so
Mm.
again, maybe it's not that this acceptance piece is just like the only thing to do, but I think people could leave a bit more room at the table for what if this is just me, and there's nothing wrong with that, you
Yeah.
know?
100%. I'm smiling because I'm thinking of like the high school time where one is, say, smoking cannabis with one's friends and entering pinnacles of extreme social awkwardness. And these questions of, am I going about this social dynamic in a
Yeah,
way that's
totally.
cool or
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right? There's these moments that potentiate where, oh my gosh, I just remember experiencing times or being in unfamiliar places, unfamiliar people, and just being in like totally locked up inside, totally locked up, and just I'm not sure how to be a human right now. And
totally. Yeah, it's so tricky. It's confusing. Um, yeah, I want to circle back to coming back into the valley a bit. What you're riffing on, kind of the guild, the tribe that we do it with, and how much that matters, and what was really in kind of making the through line back to that first conversation where we got into the idea of the sort of collective happiness, kind of connecting to capital T, the prayer of sort of Gaia of life that we all get to be um, different streams of. Like you're saying, we're all going to the top of the mountaintop, but we each have sort of different offerings to bring to the altar at the top, kind of thing. Different flags to place, different colors, things like this. But we're all kind of aimed at that sort of same collective happiness. And so, talking about the importance of the tribe and the people, and I feel like there's such a clear and palpable like resonance to people who you can really tell are aiming their arrow at that sort of mountaintop. And
Mhm.
again, it's like we're each gonna place a different puzzle. We're each gonna place a different piece to the puzzle, but you can feel that we're sort of orienting to the same general thing. And and part of that is people who are playing the sort of infinite game, because part of learning to live within the valley is realizing that there's just mountaintops upon mountaintops upon mountaintops.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love this idea that when you realize that, you can be like, oh, okay, maybe we stay at this campsite in the valley for a couple nights extra, actually, and we sing some songs, we enjoy the creek, because there's just going to be another mountaintop. And there is this very,
Mm-hmm.
I think, natural part of the human species that looks to a mountaintop in dreams, who
Yeah.
looks to a mountaintop in longs. And again, it's not coming from a place of brokenness. It's not coming from
Mm-hmm.
a place of, once I reach the mountaintop, I'll be better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very beautiful, natural part of our species, this capacity
Mm-hmm.
to long for things that we don't
Yeah.
quite yet have or see or feel. And so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
being able to sort of balance both of those two, enjoying the campfire songs with your friends and laughing, and also that sort of insatiable thirst to climb the mountain and do the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a critical balance. I think of Ray Dalio and his book Principles, which has so many gems. And Ray Dalio, as just a very, very successful investor, someone who's made billions of dollars, helped other people make lots of money, he really speaks from this place of both all the mistakes along the way, but also the sense of really deep clarity that there's nothing intrinsically about, say, the $1 billion that's going to bring any kind of lasting happiness. And, you can hear like a spiritual teacher say that and resonate with the truth of, all right, maybe there's something about awareness itself where I'm going to be the most happy and I shouldn't pursue all these other things. It kind of hits a little bit differently when someone has, say, $1 billion and they can also attest of, yes, this mountain, had some satisfaction, but it has no ultimate satisfaction.
Yeah.
And so his nugget of wisdom is very much around this ethos of it's just kind of all about mountaineering, in the
Yeah.
sense
Yeah.
that you want to keep climbing mountains. It's like that's the spice of life. Is he distills it as meaningful work with people you love. Like that's mountaineering. That's what we're up to. And at the same time, it's that both and you were just speaking to. Keep going for the mountains. That's a great lifestyle. And also, take the knowledge that there's nothing intrinsically about being on that mountaintop that's going to have lasting satisfaction.
Yeah. It reminds me of this poem. I wish I could remember it. It's by David White. It's something, maybe it's called Arrival or Arriving, but it's basically like the idea that we're always almost there.
Mm,
We're always we're always almost arriving.
yeah.
It's like the state that we are in. And yeah, and this is a topic that we talk about a lot and we'll probably always talk about. Because it's so juicy. One, the reminders just to play, have fun, and but I wonder, will we have a day where we finally come and realize, what, we're just gonna start meditating now? Our younger years, until we were 60 years old or something, we were chasing the things, and then it kind of dies off. Maybe. I think
Yeah.
there is probably something to the sort of youthful, like the youthful spirit, the hunger. That's
Mhm.
really beautiful.
Yeah.
But it reminds me of something that Godzi was talking about, which comes from Bill Plotkin again. And one of the things that he was talking about is this sort of trap that some spiritual people can get in, where we kind of try and turn off from the longings. We
Mm.
try and we convince ourselves that we don't actually want to climb to the top of the mountaintop. We act like we're all good, but it's sort of this like pseudo acceptance.
Mhm.
And so a big part of the development is like reawakening this desire. And what Plotkin talks about, in order to sort of get ready for the descent into soul, this sort of big life moment, is reawakening your adolescent wish list and starting to pursue it. Like these
Right.
things, because for most of us, we had these adolescent checklists, wish lists, that we kind of forgot about.
Mm.
But at some point, there's this sort of unfinished cycle within our development from that. And it's not saying you have to complete it, but it's pursuing it until you know that it's no longer there or something
Mm.
happens.
Mm.
And I love this idea. I love this idea a lot, because I think many, many people could sort of revisit it and there would be some value there,
Mm.
and that it's not wrong. But the sort of part B to this idea that I was thinking about the other day is just there's the big adolescent wish list, but then there's all these other micro wish lists within our life now. Maybe these are like things that you want to do, habits you want to do, projects that you want to complete. And the idea was that like these wish lists, like the wish list is the birth canal. And I'm realizing that with the habits I'm doing now, like until you do the things that you want to do that are lingering in your mind, that are these open loops of desire, like there's not going to be a next horizon available. But once you start to do those things, there comes a moment where for me, like with some of my habits I'm doing now after 30 days or something, I'm starting to get this moment where I can feel there's space for something else. Something else is emerging now. And so it's just like this very clear like birth canal experience because, you know, these things are starting to move into the past now. So
Yeah, absolutely. There's two components there that really stick out to me. And one is the realization that we are farmers, or perhaps maybe more succinctly, we've definitely riffed on this in the past. There's a lot of mojo here, I know for sure, around being the gardeners, and that, you know, we get to tend these sacred gardens. We get to have our longings. I love the adolescent checklist. I think it's really true. And I think if we aren't pursuing our adolescent checklist in our free time, that might really lead to some issues.
yeah.
You know, I feel that sense that the adolescent checklist is a part of that full fuck lifestyle. So that's one aspect, that like flourishing, let's get this, you know, garden amazing. And there's such an important motif around when our garden is going really well, to share the fruits and the flowers with other people so they can keep remembering that they need to invest in their garden. Because it doesn't take that long, I don't think, to be detached from the garden, so to speak, to start to become a bit lost and wander and, you know, whatever happened to my habits. And so I do believe we have a certain responsibility when things are going well to be sort of the reminders to other people that, hey, like, get back into the garden. Things come through the birth canal if you stay with it, mixing metaphors. Then the other piece that I just want to touch on before throwing it back to you is exhaustion. You know, in the best sense of it, like exhausting a desire. Like quite literally, there might be a part of me that needs to go really fast in a car at some point. It's just some inner 16-year-old's like, I want to experience that. Like, I don't want to die and not have been in a race car. It sounds a little, you know, whatever. It just I'm seeing that some people out there, they register that's fun. I haven't ever done it. So there's that adolescent checklist of like, that could actually have some real life force. And then within that, there's the sense of, you know, I'm probably not going to dedicate my life to being in cars that going fast, but I bet I can exhaust that desire, get a sense of what's going on there, experience that slice of the human experience, and, you know, appreciate people who have made that more, say, their passion or their lifestyle, and just get it out of my system.
Totally. Yeah, there's something so beautiful about that. I love the image of you being in the NASCAR car and you're just 16-year-old is so full out, but there's such a beautiful quality of uh like accepting and uplifting the desire, you know, assuming that your adolescent wish list isn't like, you know, massacring a village. Like there's something so beautiful about just it's not spiritual. Like just leaving the room at the table and in these very human things, you know, it's a NASCAR, it's using oil, it's putting like, you know, it's like there's something so beautiful about that, you know, and I could use more of that, I think, within these sorts of communities. There's such a like quality of humanness. Um,
Yeah.
I want to kind of go back to what you were saying, and this was in your latest newsletter as well, kind of speaking to how the time that we're in is not a neutral playing field and the sort of necessity of giving back. You know, maybe using this metaphor, like if you have a thriving garden, the necessity of maybe creating a fruit stand that other people can come eat from, or showing people how you tended to your garden. But this, you know, this sort of called to that responsibility. So I'm wondering if you could maybe unpack that, and we could explore that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think as a deep philosophical starting point, from even a first principles of physics, really wondering what is neutrality.
Mm.
I think I can appreciate that there's neutral within certain contexts. I'm thinking organic chemistry. There's some kind of neutrality that's communicated in the distinctions between, say, an acid and a base. And there's different places where neutrality holds a sort of precision. When it comes to psychology, or when it comes to social dynamics, when it comes to human relating, the nature of neutrality seems kind of superfluous to me. There's no neutrality. I'm either loving you and that feels great, or I'm misattuned and it doesn't. I don't think there's a gray area there in regards to the qualities of moment to moment human needs. It's like we're in the sunlight and the sunlight feels really good and we're getting our vitamin D. And then there's a specific moment where it'll start to create skin cancer or something like this. We have these thin margins as human beings. And I think on a very primordial level, we are Goldilocks seekers. So I know I'm like going deep into a sort of tangential zone here around the nature of neutrality. But if you follow the logic train here, the idea is very much that flourishing positivity cannot be taken for granted and is perhaps an evolutionary and social necessity. And the other piece here that I'll just add into the soup is I really deeply believe that humanity is on a very, very, very narrow path right now. And the movement through the eye of the needle really deeply demands that every single human participate in a flourishing positivity. And I know for me, one of the many facets of motivation for this podcast and for my writing and for anything that I'm doing right now is helping tip the scales in terms of scalable wisdom, scalable flourishing positivity. I don't think this is a time to be neutral about life.
Totally, man. Yeah, I just want to reflect back to you, so we're on the same page, and the listener, we're all kind of on the same boat together. If I'm hearing what you're saying right about sort of the nature of neutrality, another way to say it that I'm understanding is that like life has a teleology, and like our human species does as well. Like it has a direction that is wanting to go, like on the deepest primordial level, and that is human flourishing. And the kind of human flourishing we're talking about is the kind of human flourishing that also is life flourishing, is the earth flourishing. And so that it's not like we're in a random soup just kind of bouncing off of each other. Like that is very much the clear direction that life is wanting to move within. And that if humans don't get our shit together right now, like we're walking a very fine line. Is that track to what you're speaking to?
I love it, man. Yeah, beautifully said.
Yeah, and this is something that I struggled with for a long time, because it's like, okay, well, is this just another time in history, and everyone else in past cycles felt the same way, the Roman Empire stuff, like this sort of fourth turning kind of idea that life's just moving in cycles, but then is this just another cycle? And I feel like there's two levels to see this on, because maybe on one level the whole life's just moving in cycles, we're just in another cycle. Maybe that is true, but I think on a whole other level, inside of all of the cycles, there is a very necessary experience to fully participate within the cycle, and to fully feel this is fucking crazy, we need to do something about this might be the end of all ends. Like I think there is such a necessary participation within that. And I think to what you're speaking to is there is something that is so generative when we can relate to it in the right way, but in a way where it when we touch that, the essence of that, like, holy shit, like this is not a time of peace. Like there's a lot of really fucked up things in the world. People are really not doing well. And I don't know if there's going to be an earth for our great grandchildren. There's a way to touch that inspires action. That it's like, okay, now what? Now what do I do? There's a way to do that inspires me to get off this call right now and to go and work out instead of going and doom scrolling. Like, and so I think, coming back to the idea of the lightning chaser versus the lightning wielder, sort of how to live in the valley and approach the mountain in a good way. I think this is a huge part of it. Is, are we able to touch that felt sense of what you're speaking to in a way that is generating action?
Yeah. It's really the name of the game. And we touched on this last episode, and it's one of the themes that also deserves being a through line to some extent, which is every human being will toggle between moments of developmental collapse where our overwhelm becomes too much and we can't deal with it. We'll decohere, or we'll have a bunch of negative emotions and we'll need someone to attend to our negative emotions, lest we slide into even deeper negative emotions. Or we'll have developmental breakthroughs, developmental flourishing, developmental scaffolding. And it's really worth noting here that building things that are genuinely beautiful and even reflective of our intellikeys, as we were touching on last episode, that's a lot harder than being destructive. It's so much harder to paint the Mona Lisa than it is to scribble over it. And so I think I know there's something about the Mona Lisa you were riffing on one of your Substacks, so I'm dropping seeds in there. But
Did your homework?
yeah, I'm trying to do my homework.
Yeah.
Just to try to, put a little bow on that, really attunement to what supports developmental flourishing in any given moment within ourselves and within these critical thresholds where, it's like, if I was neutral, like right now with you, Blake, I'm like, yeah, workout or doom scrolling, I'm not going to take a stand. It's like,
Yeah. Fuck
fuck
that.
that, dude.
Yeah, it's so
I
boring.
want you to work out, bro.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
I'm all in on that. It's like, it's just like there's a repugnancy to neutrality in that kind of situation.
Totally, man. I mean, it's the same thing I think we've talked about before, like tension and release. That's great music is tension and release done in more beautiful ways. Neutral songs fucking suck. You would hate music if it was neutral. You would hate music if it was the same sort of degree of tension release the entire time. It would be horrible. And so again, it's like, I think what you're talking about, this non-neutrality, we can apply it to so many different arenas. You just kind of applied it to the relational arena. Neutral relationships suck. Those are the kind of relationships where we have to get together and watch sports all day because the actual connection is so boring.
Oh,
Which I know very well. But it's like,
yeah.
I want the friends who are gonna do that sort of thing. Like, no, don't fucking go doom scroll. Like, go do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something that I want to kind of double click on that feels like there could be an interesting exploration, which is the sort of how to relate and touch this felt sense of the potential collapse of our species, and this just like the existential moment that we're in, how that relates to developmental collapse, and maybe how that is somehow tied into why most people actually avoid touching that feeling or something like that. So I'm curious if there is anything that comes up for you there.
Yeah. Wow.
And take it where you will.
Yeah. Well, I would say on a very deep level, we're talking about the adolescent checklist earlier. From the vantage point of my upbringing into this world, there have been moments where I've looked into the sea of humanity and felt deep disappointment, deep sense of, really? Like, this is how humans are living. These are the kind of sacrifices. These are the kind of compromises. These are the kind of stories.
Mm.
And that sense of going into the tragic, this is another great through line in terms of a pre-tragic life, things are good enough, into really, having the moments where you're grokking the tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are initiatory thresholds. And I was just saying to someone yesterday, it's like nobody can take that away from someone. Every single human being has to discover in their moments of reckoning with tragedy, do they make medicine of it? Do they scheme deeper? Is their time alone in the room one where they'll generate some kind of essay, some kind of
Yeah.
magnum opus? Or is it the time that they shut down more, numb more? And,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not always so simple. It's not always so black and white. There's a lot of factors. It's complex. And yet, I really deeply believe that nobody can take away the sense of profound disappointment from another human being in terms of really grokking the profundity of the tragedy, which we could pick 1,000 different examples of where we could point our attention and just be completely stupefied by the seeming insanity of the pain or samsara or whatever we decide to call it. And yet that heart, like that line that goes through the heart of every single human being of, do I rise to this occasion or do I collapse more?
Yeah.
That's a quintessential archetypal choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if the if the potential problem that lives through the door that you might open, if you don't feel that you can do anything about it, or if it's too big to handle, then it makes no sense to open the door. Right? And so I think on a very deep level, because of kind of our cultural conditioning and things like this, people don't feel like they can do anything about the state of the world. We've been led to believe that my actions won't do anything at all. And so there's no point in opening up the doorway and feeling the depth of the existential crisis. And I think we could also talk about sort of the development of like self-efficacy growing up, and that so many people that's been underdeveloped, Our
Yeah.
development is going to soccer practice and getting the good score on the quiz. But in terms of, I hear parenting advice nowadays of like really giving your kids more tasks to do and things like this, like giving them a lot more responsibility so that there is this developmental muscle that says like, I know I can influence my reality. Like I know that I can sort of take care of myself. I can create change in my environment. I can solve problems, right? Most of us didn't get that growing up. It was like something needed to be done. I was on the Xbox telling my mom to go, screw herself because I wasn't gonna do it. So so now it's like, yeah, there's no point in feeling it if all that's going to happen, and this is sort of touching on, I feel like, the nature of emotions and how most people have been conditioned to think about it, is like, if I go there and open up this doorway and there's this beast living on the other side, it's going to eat me alive, talking about emotions. But as we know, it's like the way is through. Okay, like that's what's needing to happen. And so sort of the same thing that we're speaking to is that it's actually through really getting to stew within this existential fear, what the fuck, grief about humanity. It's actually through that the action arises.
Mm-hmm.
The way that, okay, this is what I can do. This is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So
100%. I mean, that image of the door, the realization that if you open the door, you'll be eaten alive, the sense of loneliness or the sense of despair or the sense that it's all on you, is so deeply woven into my personal calling of studying somatic therapeutic process, discovering how to essentially have my own hand held as I tremble inside of myself, as I look at the abyss, and also the art of learning to hold other people's hands
mm,
in that process. And a really meaningful image that Brian, a shout out to Brian Tierney, Boundless Body podcast, one of the images Brian gave me in some of our more intimate dialogues when we were first developing our relationship was the image of the orphan. And it really touched a deep chord. And I suspect that the image of the orphan will touch a deep chord in most people because it's an image of the quality of aloneness that we feel when we look towards the bigness of the world and we look towards the strangeness of others. And the image that he offered within the orphan is essentially like the other orphan coming and bonding with, an orphan finding another orphan, and
Totally.
then holding each other while they trembled in fear.
Yeah.
And I really feel like we actually touched on this in our podcast with Brian. We called it the quiver, I think, in that podcast.
Yeah.
But I really do think there's something about finding each other and trembling in fear together,
Yeah.
because we really
Yeah.
all feel it. And we're not supposed to tremble in
Totally.
fear by ourselves.
Yeah, it's such a potent image, man. It makes me think about a couple of things that came from the Emerald podcast with Josh. One of them is he shared like a poem or a quote that I'm not going to say right, but it was something along the lines of like, it's actually through the thirst that we are like satiated in the way that we're longing for. So it's actually not through the water itself, but it's through the thirst that it's through like the deep thirst of that water that's actually what is satiating us. And the other thing comes from a different episode where he's talking about, for most of us, for most people around the world, especially for us white people and people in America and whatnot, like the songs that we are needing to be singing or just naturally would come through, they're not songs of belonging. Like they're songs of not belonging. They're songs of sort of this like lost wanderer. But it's actually through like singing to the not belonging, singing to the loneliness, singing to this sort of ancient memory of what once was. That's actually where we receive that sort of nourishment. That's where the ties of belonging start to form again, through singing to the not belonging. And I think that's so beautiful.
Mm. I think I have a good through line on what you just shared.
Yeah. I have somewhere as well, but I'll trust you.
All right. And maybe you want to try to land the plane close to the hour?
Yeah, I feel like I have a little bit more in the tank, but around the hour feels good.
Cool. I'll sync up with your tank. Yeah. So on the through line of belonging, I feel like there's an interesting performativity within social connection that's a part of pressure systems and a part of tension, which in the positive sense coheres. And I think even in this particular moment, I can very much track the sort of performance pressure of wanting to cohere into something where, say, my words are elegant, the way that they land for you is meaningful, the supposed listener right now is inspired or moved, or there's maybe some degree of authenticity or whatever it might be. This, let's call it a positively cohering sort of instinct within the social fabric of my mind.
Like your desire in sort of connection is not neutral, kind of.
Yeah, that's a good tie-in. Absolutely. It's not neutral. It's aiming for coherence.
Yeah.
And the piece that I feel is important there is, well, this is a very generative instinct. I think we see it go too far in our culture, and the sort of performativity instincts of everything needs to be monopolized. Everything needs to become some kind of statement of virtue signaling. There's all these different categories of experience where the human instinct to socially cohere seems to create malfunctions in the pressure system, so to speak. And the other polarity that I think is interesting, that's also tied into this art of belonging, art of attunement, is who can we decohere with? Who can we shoot the shit with, in a sense? Who can we be non-performative with? And out of that feel something, say, more organic or more human or closer to home. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of put that on the table because I feel like at least in the way I track it at this particular point in where we are in axis of genius, and then where we are just in terms of what is a generative culture of flourishing, it's some balance here between exemplifying the positive attributes of cohering and a positive sense of performance and the sense of,
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
to see your best art. I don't want to see the shit you threw at the wall. But on the flip side, we deeply need the human. We deeply need the decohered, I'm a mess right now. Who can I just like have a relaxed sphincter and not have to feel like I'm always on call kind of thing?
Yeah, totally. And for most people, it seems like in our culture, the sphincter is always activated. Like you're always on call. Like even the people that, yeah, I feel like that's part of a lot of people's work when we start kind of the healing journey is like, okay, I can relax my sphincter around a couple people. Finding maybe that first person is the therapist or whoever it is, and then we start to kind of ripple that into other relationships. But yeah, I love what you're saying, and I think part of it is, in the beginning, my mind goes to, well, should the goal just be that we we try and make every single kind of container of relationship or belonging neutral, where it's like we as much as we can, we try and let go of the sort of being on call or the sort of non-neutral desire within this context. But then sitting with it more, and I feel like what you're speaking to is no, it's not wrong. Like, for example, right now, the fact that I want to be on my best, I want to sound good, I want to genuinely speak to things that are benefiting people listening, none of that's wrong. Because there's a part of me that's like, okay, I just want to try and be as authentic as I possibly can here. And, I think there's probably a gray area in between it as well, because I also want to bring a sense of humanness.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a filter to the interaction, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. 100%. It really brings me to a fundamental point when I started contemplating this idea of the mythopoetic of the lightning wielder. And it very much crystallized in the sense of this is wholly positive. Even if we look at our naivete, all the ways we sought, all the ways we were seeking, all the ways we were transactional in the spiritual marketplace of ideas and tried this on and tried that on, and maybe had some success, flashes of insight, fell off the path again. All of that comes from a deeply positive place. This idea, we would say maybe in a different context, I've certainly heard you articulate ideas like this, is don't trash people trying to get in the arena.
Yeah.
Don't be the guy in the stands, pointing the finger at people who are trying to make something amazing happen. And the flip side of that is, how do we as human beings who are wielding lightning to some degree make that path easier for people who have a wholly positive instinct inside of them, so that they don't have to spend, so that we can minimize their time in naivete and maximize their time in a legit path of mastery.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the missions and quests is like, how many people can we get onto the playing field? Just like, come on, like get on the plane. Because once we're on the playing field and we get over the kind of initial hump of like, holy shit, I want to go back to the bench. It's like, then we can take a breath and say, okay, here we go. We're in the valley. We're in the valley. Here we go. Welcome to the path of mastery. You'll be here the rest of your life. But thank God we're here. Thank God that we're here. Because the playing field, that's where the most exciting things happen. That's where life is dancing. Kind of going back to the non-neutrality, like the playing field is not neutral. Thank God. Thank God.
Yeah, game on.
It's like that's where the best, most exciting, horrifying, joyous experiences happen. It's on the playing field.
Yeah.
And not everyone's on the playing field. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in the same article that you were referencing that I wrote yesterday, I don't know if this is true, but it's a mental model that I'm trying on, is that the fundamental motivation of transformation is twofold. In option A, we're suffering, we're in pain, we're in misery, we're lost, we're confused, and we're willing to kind of actually start doing anything that'll get us out of that state.
Mm.
And unfortunately, that's just way, way, way too common. And when people are lucky, they make contact with someone who can genuinely support them. When people are unlucky, they make contact with charlatans and people who are in the great marketplace of spirituality and healing and blah, 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 blah. So option A, it's tough, right? We're quite literally describing the pain and misery of the human condition. And when we're really in touch with that, we're motivated to change. So that's the idea there. But option B is we're compelled by a vision. Like we're compelled by pleasure. We're compelled by something that we're striving for. We're compelled by winning something in that arena of life. And I feel like really clarifying, where is our motivation coming from? Are we trying to get away from something, or are we trying to make more of something that we think is worth making more of, is an important piece there.
Yeah, totally, man. I feel like every time we talk about kind of what's your why, the same thing, it just like strikes such a deep chord in me. It's like, oh shit, there's so much more room for me to continually come back to this. Like such a continual meditation in my day to day and my moment to moment throughout my day. What's the why? Coming back to it. And we all, everyone listening has probably heard this a million times, but I think it's something that we can all lean into more and more and more. And it's, again, deepening into your why. It's another one of these sort of infinite horizons where there's no bottom to the depth of your connection to your why. And I think the people that you would look at and say, wow, they're so alive, they're so on their mission, they're just so like vibrating in purpose and like connection to their life. I think these are people who have just like dug such deep roots within their own why.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's coming back to the sort of, when we feel into the kind of existential nature of our time, that can be such a beautiful part of that root system of the why, because it's moving towards something, and it's also acknowledging the context of the time that we live within.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. My mind is drawn, in this dichotomy from developmental collapse to developmental flourishing again. And I think the why, kind of as you're saying, say it 1,000 times, say it 1,000,000 times, let's add another plus one, 1,000,001 times.
Mm.
It really brings to mind this idea. I use this idea all the time, and I'm confident you do as well. And it's another idea. It's just like it's just as a part of the building blocks, which is scaffolding.
Mm.
The next stage has scaffolding. You don't just build a building and just 3D print it into existence as of right now. There's these step-by-step progressions, and the scaffolding as we're going set by set, practice session by practice session. Why is the blueprint? It's the hidden harmony. It's the felt sense of the invisible thing that we're seeing that's quite literally bringing us to hammer board to board to fulfill the design that we is just in our mind's eye, or maybe we sketched it out, or maybe we made an architectural design. But we literally are making the invisible visible when we're making dreams reality. And why is really the fuel of all of that. And so it's like, yeah, 1,000,001, 1,000,002 times, like set by set, put it in everything. Really, it is the fabric of everything.
Yeah, totally, man. It brings to mind the image of sort of the acorn becoming the oak tree, and the idea that the blueprint was always within the acorn. And so then it's like each little piece of the tree that's growing is actually just kind of moving like a cloud or a fog away from a part of the map that's already there.
Mm.
And so, like you're saying, each time that you do a scale or something, you're just filling in almost like the part of the coloring book, like the coloring book with all the picture, and you're just filling in the different pieces, kind of what it feels like. And also, it brings to mind something that someone in the Forge group on Saturday shared. we were talking about what's your why, and one of the guys in the group was having a really hard time with, connecting to the greater vision, connecting to this. I'm doing this because of the existential nature of our time and to be a benefit to the benefit of all. Like, he had a really hard time connecting with that. And this woman said to him, what if your why was just because it felt good? Like, what if that was enough? And I think there's something really beautiful about that. But again, in a way, if we follow that thread, that also tracks into this very macro why. Because if you're doing it just because it feels good to you, naturally doing something that genuinely feels good to you is going to help you show up better for your friends, your community, which again, we follow the ripple out, and then you doing something that genuinely feels good to you is literally benefiting the evolutionary pulse of life reverberating through the cosmos. So it's both.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to try articulating this because I haven't ever personally articulated this, but it's an idea that I'm thinking about a lot as it's coming through the Cloudless Mind Dan Brown transmission. And he keeps riffing on this idea that there's sort of a fundamental thing the mind is doing pretty much constantly, which is either moving away from things that it doesn't want and trying to make less of it, or moving towards things that we want more of and trying to make more of it. And I think there's a sort of one-to-one translation there with what we would call aversion, trying to get away from things, and attachment. You like what it is, and then you want more of it. And I feel like one of the most incredible shifts is going from a sort of negative polarity of, I don't like this and I want more of that, which on the most basic level, like pleasure has a sort of nihilistic, addictive like quality to it. It's like in our more primitive brain, that's sugar addiction, that's endless scrolling. It's just, I'm just doing this, it just feels good. There's no higher purpose. And I think the stepping stone that we need to be able to, at least I guess I'm speaking for myself, like it's really, I think, meaningful to journey into discovering how to articulate what that higher cycle is, or what that more virtuous cycle is in regards to pleasure that doesn't have attachment woven into it. It's not, doesn't have aversion woven into it. It's somehow is compelled by something that truly does feel good. It's truly pleasurable to the body. It's truly happiness producing, but that it's not such a sort of base note, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Would you say that naturally happens depending on what the thing is that we're doing, or is it more of in the realm of how we're orienting what we're doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in this moment, I'm really not sure. This is my first time really articulating this idea.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a through line in terms of what the mechanism is and what the process is.
Yeah.
But I can definitely distinguish in my own life, say, with practicing piano, which just is what sprung to mind when you asked this question. It's not like playing every day is pleasurable. And it's like sometimes my back hurts. Sometimes I don't necessarily like the way it sounds. I'm kind of clunking around trying to figure out what I want to play. But there is an intangible motivating force that's connected to a higher purpose and a higher pleasure. It's subtle.
Yeah.
Subtle.
Totally. Yeah, when you say, like, I haven't played much with this idea, so I'm also in the experimental in real time, but it sounds like when you say that, like the subtle stream that's coming through when you're playing the piano, when I hear you say that, to me it makes me think of like that's a stream that's just running through you in general. And so it's going to come through in the piano. It's going to come through in your dojo in the morning. Like that, it's almost feels like less of a specific node type of thing, like piano. It doesn't happen over here, but it happens over here, and more of like a consistent stream for you. And I guess coming back to the question that I just asked you, it was making me think of what we've talked about in the past of like generating the frames that we hold when we're doing certain things, and that we actually have the keys to creating the story, creating the frame, changing our orientation to what we are doing. And so sort of this idea of, is it a matter of generating the proper orientation to the behavior, the action that sort of leads to this pleasure that is not polluted with sort of stickiness.
Yeah. Yeah, what comes to mind is Robert Keegan's work, who's amazing developmental psychologist who really coined the phrase self-authorship.
Mm.
And I feel like you really actually kind of hit home runs on this idea pretty regularly, which is the way I heard you describing it in the Forge on Monday was something to the effect of how you had to tell yourself a super compelling story to like really get in like the game mindset around making money.
Yeah.
And that's just such a brilliant example of self-authorship where there's something about our capacity as a meaning-making species to craft story and to know in a way like we're playing with the raw elements of creativity itself. It's not necessarily quote unquote true
Yeah.
in like a grand cosmic sense, but fuck, it's way better than the alternative.
Totally, man. Yeah, and I think that this is a huge piece that maybe we go deeper on next time, because we could talk for a while about this. But I really, I mean, this is something that is kind of a newer exploration for me, to use the word self-authoring, and like, um, I think it's something that most people have not really explored at all. And we assume that, okay, if this thing, if this behavior, if this pursuit isn't working for me, then it's not working for me. And usually there's no story, or maybe it's just like an unconscious story or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just, to use the example again for like selling or business or something, for me, something that we've seen done in such shitty ways, where I have so many stories about, and it's like, yeah, I've had to create a really massive story and frame and sort of mythology around all of it that actually allows me to do it. And so I feel like that applies to literally everything that we do. So, assuming that you're not, doing something that's just inherently painful or in a bad way or something, most of the things, if we had a different story around it, probably would completely change our experience of doing the thing.
Yeah. This might be a good place to land the plane because I can feel my energy shifting, but I mean
Yeah, yeah,
that quite literally is the exclamation mark of Viktor Frankl.
yeah,
I'm not going to get his
totally.
beautiful quote, but it's like the man who
Yeah,
has a why can endure anyhow,
yeah,
or
exactly.
I mean
Totally.
that's like he comes from the most profound place in saying that.
And this touches on what we talked about last time again, which is like, he had the frame inside of the concentration camp that he knew this was going to be the book that he wrote. Like,
Mm.
he knew when he endured this, that this was going to be what people read and that would inspire generations and all of that. And so again, coming back to like, when you're in the trenches, when you're daring to get onto the playing field and you're just getting beaten down by life and you're not getting the results. And again, like, this is the story that I am going to tell when I am on the other side of this. If we can develop that frame, it completely changes kind of the orientation and provides that necessary story to endure the how.
I got chills when you said that, man. I think it's a great place to end.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing.
Ending strong.
If you're still here, share it with a friend.
Smash that like button.
I think we
Like,
need to just record you doing that. We'll put at the end of every episode.
so, like and subscribe, drop a comment, let us know what you think.
For real though, if you're still here, we greatly appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
And I would love for you to leave a comment, so it's not a one-way street of conversation. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, do it for Blake.
Give us some talking points. Give us some
Yeah,
topics
yeah.
you want to hear about.
Let
Yeah.
it rip. Just give us a piece of your mind.